We're going to break down all the details. Well, hi, hello everybody, welcome back to Fiction Technician. If you haven't been here before, my name is Jane, I am a writer of historical cozy mysteries, and I love sharing about the craft and business of writing right here. So today, we're going to be talking about how to create the perfect cover for your cozy mystery. We're going to kind of break down all of the artistic conventions that let a reader know that it's a cozy and give them a little idea of what kind of cozy it is. If you are a cover designer, this video is going to help you serve your clients by making sure you're hitting kind of all the necessary elements of a cozy cover. If you are a self-publishing writer, this video is going to help you communicate with your cover designer so that you get what you need to make your book sell. And if you're a traditional writer, well, you're not going to have that much control over your cover, but this video will help you understand what your publishing house is trying to achieve with your cover so that you can talk to them about it in a way that takes their concerns into account. So let's start by defining what a good cover is going to do for your book. Well, it's pretty simple. A good cover is going to communicate clearly about the appealing aspects of your book, the reasons that somebody might want to read it. That's really it. That's the whole ball game. A great cover will do this while also drawing the eye or intriguing the reader. But these things are not nearly as foundational and important as that clear communication. You don't have to communicate about every aspect of your book, and indeed, you can't. Because the more different elements you try to communicate, the more muddy things are going to get, and you're going to lose some of that clarity. Clarity will always be our watchword. So basically, there are three things we're looking to communicate with our cozy cover. First, that it's a cozy, that it is a low violence mystery focused on a domestic crime. If you want to know more about exactly what makes a cozy, I did a video on that a while back, and I will link that at the end of the video. The second thing we want to communicate is, what is the hook? What makes this cozy's premise different from every other cozy on the shelf? And the third thing we want to communicate is, how funny is it? By which I mean, is it more towards the unrealistic, silly, campy, goofy kind of cozy, or is it more towards the realistic, heartfelt cozy with depth and complexity? Cozies run this whole range, and we want to help our readers place our cozy on one side of the spectrum or the other. For this last element, humor, you're going to do some of the communication in your promotional copy, which is the text that appears on the back of your book or in your listing on an online store. But there are still a few artistic conventions you can use to help your reader figure out whether your cozy is their kind of cozy. So we're going to be looking at 4 distinct styles of cozy covers and asking how each of these styles answer these 3 questions. But before we get into different styles, let's talk about cozy covers as a whole. So these are all cozy covers, and they have a lot of differences among them, but they also have some important similarities. First, let's look at the color palette. These cozies are bright, colorful, saturated colors. We see lots of pinks, yellows, cornflower blues. These colors don't really say murder and mayhem nearly as much as they say, girl, let's have some fun. The second element that all cozy covers are going to have is either a picture of the sleuth or an allusion to the hook. Frequently both, but one is necessary. The allusion to the hook can come in a couple of places, in the illustration or in the title. Very frequently, cozies have punny titles, punny, not funny, where the concept of death is mixed with the concept of the hook. For example, we have Live and Let Chai about a tea shop owner, or Slay It with Flowers about a florist. In addition to being a way to communicate about the hook, a punny title is also a way to communicate about the humor level. If we see a pun in the title, we're going to expect some laughs. And lastly, the final element that every cozy cover has to have is a series subhead. That is a small title indicating what mystery series your book belongs to. All right, now let's drill down and talk about specific styles. I just want to mention here, I'm going to be throwing a lot of covers at you. So if you see something that looks like something you might like to read, hop on down to the links below and support that author. It is also a great way to support my channel at no cost to you. Now, our first style we're going to call the cartoon sleuth cover. This is not an industry term. It's just the best way I can think of to describe the image I see on cozy cover after cozy cover, which are these cute illustrated detectives. I call her the cartoon sleuth because we're not seeing a lot of shading here. We're seeing bright, crisp lines and big animated faces. The cartoon sleuth is usually facing towards the reader, and you can see that she usually has a bit of spunk. Even this one, Poppy Harmon Investigates, where she's facing away from the viewer, well, we can still tell by her pose and her clothing that she's got a little bit of sass. I mean, what can I say? Cozy readers love reading about smart, determined women with a little bit of an edge, and sassy is often how we express that in words. Cartoon sleuths are often how we express that through illustration. If you're self-publishing a cozy, a cartoon sleuth cover is a great one to go with because it is fairly quick and easy for an independent cover artist to produce for you. So basically there are two kinds of covers and the price for them varies widely. First, there are original illustration covers that an artist had to draw from the ground up. And then there are photoshopped covers that might use a few stock images and put them together to form your cover. That's usually going to be the case with a self-published cartoon sleuth cover. Either you or your designer is going to go through a site like iStock or Shutterstock and look for an image that looks like it could resemble your sleuth and an image that could be your background. Put them together, make a few changes, and give you a beautiful cartoon sleuth cover. Obviously, the original illustration covers take more time and therefore are more expensive. And that's why cartoon sleuth covers are very popular among self-publishing cozy authors because they scream cozy and are affordable. Our next style of cozy cover is going to be called the pure food cover. So this cover is only for one particular type of cozy hook, and that's culinary mysteries. Mysteries that are about a chocolatier, a caterer, a baker. I call them pure food covers because that's what we got. A piece of food on the cover. It's possible to include an element of mortality along with the food. For example, Double Shot has a lethal looking knife on the saucer instead of a butter knife. And Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder has one of the chocolate chips in the shape of a skull. But this is by no means required. The other two covers are nothing but food. If you happen to be writing a culinary mystery, well then you have this option available to you. You can also choose a different style of cozy cover that feels more appealing to you, but there are certain advantages to the pure food cover because I could straight up make one of these myself, and after just a little study in Photoshop, so could you. So why does this one particular type of hook have a cover style all to itself? Well, I don't really have data on this, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it all goes back to Diane Mott Davidson. She began writing her Goldie Schultz catering mysteries back in 1990 and always did very well with them. I think she was the first one to get these pure food covers. And because her series did so well, when other publishing houses were ready to put out culinary mysteries, they said to themselves, let's put it out there with a cover that will remind people of Diane Mott Davidson. This is how cover code often evolves. You may remember that in 2011, 50 Shades of Grey came out, and it sort of created this new little niche within the romance genre, and it had a very unique cover. It had this grayscale cover, very close up on an ordinary object. And within a year or two, I remember seeing all three of these romances at the bookstore, and you can see that they all have the same look. They all are gray or nearly gray. They have an extreme close-up, and what all of these covers are trying to say is, I will remind you of 50 Shades of Grey. What does the evolution of cover code mean for you? Not a lot. If there is a particular book that your book is very similar to and which has a unique cover, well, you can totally emulate that cover and try to make fans of that author into fans of yours. But do keep in mind, this will only work if that book performed so well that its cover is memorable to a large percentage of your ideal audience. The next cover style I want to talk about is the high realism cozy cover. All right, so right off the bat, we're going to notice that the intensity of our color palette has come way down. Some of the covers are less saturated, that is, they are more grayed out, and we've lost all of our sunshine yellows and bubblegum pinks because things are getting realer now. In addition to this more sedate palette, we are also seeing more realistic depictions of our sleuths. We're often seeing more shading and more detail. When I say that things are becoming more real, I don't mean that they're becoming gritty. I don't mean that the horror and violence of murder has become more real. I mean that the relationships among your characters and their emotions will be more real in this kind of book. In a high realism cozy, we expect depth and complexity and less humor than we might in a book that had a cartoon sleuth cover. These books often have significant subplots that have nothing to do with the mystery, but instead are about emotions. We might see a coming of age story, a story of love won and then lost, or a story of recovery from grief. Another thing you may notice is that all the books that get high realism covers are historical cozies. Why is that? Is there no market for contemporary cozies that have deep emotional plots? Well, I don't think that's the case. I actually think that there are contemporary cozies that deliver powerful emotional stories. But at present, there is no cover code that explicitly expresses this. The high realism sleuth is likely to be facing away from the reader, or perhaps her face will be occluded by shadow or a veil. That might seem like a weird, trivial detail for me to focus in on, but actually, it's not. The thing is that all of these artistic conventions are basically a code that your ideal reader has internalized. When she goes into the bookstore looking for a new book, she's not thinking, I want a book with the sleuth turned around backwards, but she is thinking that she wants a book that reminds her of the last few cozies that she's really enjoyed. And when she sees a cover that really hits on all those cylinders, that really reminds her of those other books, she's going to have a visceral reaction to it. So even though these covers are high realism, they never use photographic images. We see a cover here, and this style, this character, this pose would be totally appropriate to a cozy. But I know it's not one, and that's because the palette is a little too dark for even a historical cozy, and because it uses photographic images. So if you're hoping that you can put together a photoshopped high realism cover for your cozy out of photographic images, that is not a cover that is really going to read cozy to your ideal reader. I've got one more cover style I want to talk about, but first I want to ask you to please like this video if you feel like it's helping you understand all the ins and outs of cozy covers. Please subscribe if you haven't, and if you have a cozy writer in your life, share this video with them because I hope it will lead them to a great cover. The last cover style I want to talk about is called the painted hook cover. So these are very popular. When I researched this video at the bookstore, this was actually the most common style of cover I saw. Like the cartoon sleuth cover, the painted hook cover is appropriate to a wide range of cozies, but unlike the cartoon sleuth cover, this cover is always built on a very detailed original illustration with a lot of depth and color and shading. Painted hook covers may introduce an element of mortality in the scene, like this skull on the floor of the knitting shop in Knit 1, Kill 2. But as with the pure food cover, this is not requisite. Painted hook covers are particularly good for cozies where the hook is a location, perhaps a little seaside villa or a quaint little English town. If you want to research cozy covers more, I suggest you start at the bookstore and not at your computer. And there are two reasons for that. First, the cover code is going to be most cleanly and consistently articulated across those traditionally published covers. This is not a slam at self-published writers. I am one. It's just that it can't be other than this. The fact is that those traditionally published covers are made to the specification of a small community of publishers who all talk shop about important matters like covers and marketing, whereas the self-published covers are made to the specifications of a wide variety of writers scattered across the world who often spend their shop talk more on writing and craft. The other reason to start at the bookstore is that cover code evolves. The bookstore is going to have the most recent releases and the most popular books, and that is really what you need to be looking at to understand what is selling in cozies today. Check out